The RCMP believe they found the bodies of two men who were the subject of an extensive manhunt for several weeks. The pair are suspects in the deaths of 3 people killed in British Columbia. The CBC's Megan Batchelor has more on the victims.
I need for anyone with information to share that, because this can't happen to another family. And I mean, it shouldn't have happened to ours.
A grief-stricken mother in the southern U.S., 8 days after her daughter's body was found on a lonely highway in BC's far north. China Deese was 24, traveling with her Australian boyfriend, 23-year-old Lucas Fowler. This is the last known video of the couple together before they were killed by gunshots.
We are just distraught. This has really torn 2 families apart.
Stephen Fowler, a senior officer on the New South Wales police force, travelled to Canada.
Lucas was just a fun-loving guy who, you know, had a goal to travel the world. He met China and they became an inseparable pair. You know, it's a love story that's ended tragically. It really is.
Sheila Deese said her family was in despair.
I have one less child, and I have 3 very sad children. They always say, you know, Mom can only be as happy as her saddest child, and I have 3 broken kids.
The body of the 3rd victim was discovered on July 19th, well west of the first crime scene, near a Dodge pickup truck with a camper that was on fire. It took 5 days to identify Leonard Dick, age 64, a botanist who lectured at the University of British Columbia.
The hard work he did raising his kids, and the equally hard work he did as a researcher. He loved it.
His family said, quote, "He was a loving husband and father. His death has created unthinkable grief, and we're struggling to understand what has happened." Friends say he enjoyed camping and was passionate about plant life. That may be what led him to his final hours amid the BC wilderness. Megan Batchelor, CBC News, Vancouver.
The search for the BC murder suspects Bryer, Schmegelsky and McLeod has been going on for weeks, and here are the key moments Canadians need to know. On July 15th, the bodies of Lucas Fowler and China Deese were found in northern BC. July 19th, the truck used by Bryer, Schmegelsky and McLeod is found by police, but it's burnt out. On that same day, the body of Leonard Dick is found near the burnt-out truck. July 21st, the 2 are spotted driving a Toyota RAV4 vehicle, which we will later learn a lot more about. The next day, that same Toyota RAV4 is found burned out near Fox Lake First Nation, 70 kilometers from Gillam, Manitoba. July 23rd, RCMP in British Columbia hold a bombshell news conference and declare the men who thought were missing were actually suspects in the 3 murders. July 27th, the military arrives to help with the search in Gillam. July 31st, RCMP then scales back its search after leads run cold and looking for those 2 suspects. Finally, today, police say 2 male bodies found near some personal items linked to the suspect, and that, of course, that discovery taking place today. RCMP officers out on a foot search, finding those 2 bodies they believe to be of the 2 suspects in this case. An email was sent out by Brenda Lucky. She is the commissioner of the RCMP, and it was sent to all staff at the RCMP. And it again goes to thank the RCMP investigators who were involved in this and offer some bigger, broader context here. First, she thanks a number of different investigative allies in this, and she mentions the OPP, the Ontario Provincial Police. She also mentions the FBI. That is something that is very interesting here. Also, the Australian Federal Police and New South Wales Police Force, but of course, one of the victims here, his father, Lucas Fowler's father, is a police investigator, so that's not necessarily a surprise there. She also goes on to say RCMP personnel work 24/7 logging more than 4,500 investigative hours, searching 11,000 square kilometers of terrain across northern Manitoba. So that just gives you a bit of the scope of what's been going on here. And to bring in Steve Marissink, he's a former RCMP major crimes investigator. When you hear that from Brenda Lucki, the commissioner of the RCMP, talking about the 4,500 investigation hours, the 11,000 square kilometers that were searched, how difficult was this investigation?
It covered a lot, or required a lot of resources. And I'm not actually surprised to hear the 4,500 by Commissioner Lucki. I'm not surprised by that.
So given the extensive scope of this, and we heard from both Ralph Goodale and we heard from the RCMP in British Columbia, when you take a look at the entire the distance that these suspects traveled from British Columbia all the way to northern Manitoba, they compared it from traveling from London to Moscow. Given that significant challenge, given that they crossed some of the most difficult terrain to cover in all of Canada, the fact that the RCMP even found these suspects, is that a surprise to you?
Not really. Yes, we do have a vast country, but across the Prairie provinces, the RCMP have been providing policing services and are very familiar with that terrain. Across from Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, the provincial police are the RCMP. So again, there would be a seamless integration between the different provinces, and the communication lines would have been very open.
One thing we heard from the BC RCMP during their news conference, they were asked about what information might they have about a motive in this case, a possible motive from the suspects. They said it's going to be extremely difficult to ascertain that, given that the suspects are not going to face trial if the identities are confirmed of these two individuals that were found dead earlier today in northern Manitoba. What are the chances that the RCMP will actually be able to determine a motive?
Well, without hearing from the suspects, it's going to be speculation based on intelligence and forensic and evidence. However, it's still going to be speculation and best belief based on experience. And there are profilers out there who can estimate or guesstimate what individuals were motivated by. And in this case, I'm sure they may utilize those resources. It's always going to be an unknown as a certainty, but again, they will be looking at the totality of everything and trying as best they can to put some motivation behind it.
What kind of evidence will investigators be looking for in their search for a motive? Take me through what investigators will be thinking right now, what they will be looking for to try and piece that together.
Well, and the suspects, I'm going to assume, burn their vehicles to get rid of evidence. Whether there was receipts in there or any evidence, that DNA that would have led them to either scene. However, they both carried evidence on their persons. We don't know whether or not one or the both had a journal, whether they were making notes on a phone, whether they did selfies, whether they took video, whether they interviewed each other. Those are all the things that would be determined from the recovery scene where the two were found deceased. So the potential for evidence is there, but again, we'll have to wait to hear for that.
The RCMP in British Columbia say there's no evidence to suggest that the three victims were specifically targeted. What does that tell you?
That tells me that they were extremely capable of putting together the suspects in the short time they did. Stranger homicides, and that's where there is no known or recognized link between the offender and the victims, are extremely difficult to investigate. And you have to find that nexus that caused these two to be together. And certainly for the couple at the side of the road, it appears that the fact that their vehicle broke down was the rationale or the nexus that put them in contact with these two. Why those two stopped and they interacted, I hope they might be able to ascertain some sort of motivation, but again, that's going to be an unknown.
So walk us through what investigators in British Columbia, as well as investigators in Manitoba, what are they going to be doing over the next 48 hours?
The investigators in BC have been working on this since they first got the file. I believe it was mid-July. Now in Manitoba, though, Manitoba investigators will be looking at the recovery scene where they found the two deceased, and they will be treating that as a homicide scene. They will be doing their own forensics. They will, the bodies, I understand, are scheduled for a post-mortem examination by the medical examiner. And the hope from that is, well, the medical examiner will be able to provide a manner and cause of death, as well as determine positive identification. So that will still be ongoing. There will be a criminal investigation ongoing in Manitoba surrounding the death of these two suspects, but they will be in close liaison with the investigators from BC, again searching for forensic evidence that could link them or that would put them at the scene of the three homicides in BC.
All right, Steve Marissink, former RCMP major crimes investigator, thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Katie.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video. Thanks for watching.